Today we're going to pick one player from each Premier League club that we think is the most underrated in the squad. Before we get into it, I want to hear your club's most underrated player. I'm going to go through each of the comments and tell you why you're wrong. Because some of these names, some of these clubs are really hard to do. Let's start at Arsenal. We've got the whole squad in front of me here. I still think this is the most complete squad in the Premier League. There's just no flaws to this squad. It's a great mix of experience, youth, quality, depth in every position. I think a few standouts for me in terms of this squad, potentially underrated names. The first and foremost is Kai Havertz. Now, in his last two domestic league seasons, he's gone 13 goals, 9 goals, overall 32 goal involvements, not starting every minute of every game. In fact, last season it was just 21 starts, wasn't it? I think his hold-up play is underrated. His finishing isn't as bad as people make it out to be. He does panic in big moments and he's not as composed as some number 9s, but people seem to write him off as this sort of mockery number 9. Which is, it's honestly ridiculous. I know that Gyökeres was brought in this summer to go to the next level for Arsenal, but when Havertz is back fit, I think he can compete for that spot. That isn't the name I'm going to go for though. Instead, I actually think at this stage it's Martin Odegaard. And I think Martin Odegaard over the last performance and a half has proved a lot of people wrong. Loads of narratives were starting to develop that he wasn't good enough to play in that 10. Eze should be starting over him. He'd had a really poor 12 months, and I don't think it was his best 12 months. But what Odegaard adds to this team is just so much class and quality, especially when he's one line deeper. I actually almost prefer him a little bit deeper. I almost prefer him drifting towards the left. I think his passing angles are a little bit better. He's unbelievably creative. His progressive pass numbers are through the roof. And yet some people think he's a luxury player who doesn't add anything to the team. I interviewed Mikel Arteta last week and we were talking about Martin Odegaard and his leadership capabilities off the field. Not just what he brings on it, but off it. And I can't tell you how full of praise he was. If you haven't watched the interview, go and watch it if you're an Arsenal fan. Because Martin Odegaard, at this stage, people were taking the mick. But a player who's putting up nearly 10 progressive passes per 90 against other midfielders in the top 3% there. A carry monster as well. And, this doesn't tell a story. His off-the-ball work is superb. He's a press leader for Arsenal. The narrative this season, for me, makes him Arsenal's most underrated player. The Villa squad is a lot harder to do, I think, this season especially, just because everybody seems to have started slightly off the pace. I know they've got a couple of wins under their belt now, but this is tough. Instinctively for me here, I've gone for Boubacar Kamara. I think the contract signing in the summer was maybe Aston Villa's most important piece of business. Now, we haven't seen Yuri Tielemans really at the start of this campaign. It's a huge hole to fill. Onana, we haven't really seen the best of. I think Boubacar Kamara flies under the radar as one of the league's best central, if deep-lying midfielders. One of the issues I think that holds him back from really getting up to that top level status is his fitness and his minutes on the field. You look at the last few campaigns, especially since he's been at Villa, 21 starts is the most we've seen from him in a single league campaign. He's yet to hit 2,000 league minutes in a single season. At the start of this campaign, he's only played, I think, started half of the available matches. So we want to see more Boubacar Kamara because when he's on the field, he dictates the game. He's super strong out of possession. I think he has the ability to control the rhythm of a 90 minutes. And at Aston Villa, he might well be alongside Tielemans the most important player in the side right now. I know that McGinn is popping up with big goals, but without Morgan Rogers' output, without the best of Ollie Watkins, without a right winger really, the midfield two are going to have to be excellent this season, and Boubacar Kamara doesn't get enough spotlight. Bournemouth again I found really hard because we could look at Truffert, couldn't we? But I feel like he has got quite a lot of headlines at the start of this season. Iraola's use of the midfield really stands out to me though, because a lot of players have changed roles. You look at Alex Scott playing a lot deeper than we saw him in his EFL days. You look at the role of Ryan Christie as a press leader. But I think it might actually be David Brooks. The fact he's now captaining the side, his leadership qualities on this group, he's put up the third most chances created of any player in the Premier League flat out this season. He's actually 5th in Europe's top 5 leagues for key passes per 90. David Brooks. So on the ball, he is superb. Off the ball, he sets the tempo of the press. He is the leader in terms of pressing triggers and when to move. People don't talk about David Brooks' influence on this Bournemouth side or his quality league-wide as a creator. So I think that's the reason I'm going to put him forward for most underrated at Bournemouth. I think there's a few options here, though, you could have picked from. Brentford, I think Europe-wide, maybe I still think Damsgaard is underrated. because nobody talks about his quality on the ball in terms of a European standpoint. I do think he could be playing Champions League football. He is that good. But I think in the Premier League, people don't talk enough about Michael Coyote. His immediate, consistent performance level in the Premier League after arriving from Fiorentina at still, 20, 21 years old? It's remarkable. His physicality is amazing. He's added the long throws to his game that are super effective for Brentford. But you look at the wider stats to his game, the 5th most take-ons of any player in the league this season. That is stunning from right back for a player like Michael Coyote, who's playing under a new coach without players like Norgard and Bournemouth, Visser in the side. It took him, 6 months to adapt, and now we're seeing one of the best fullbacks in the league consistently every week. Another name I want to shout out at Brentford, by the way, at the start of this campaign, is Jordan Henderson, because I feel like since Christian Norgard left, everybody felt it was going to be a big leadership void in the middle of the park, and that Jordan Henderson probably had the capability to fill that. But there were question marks about his ability, what he'd done at Ajax, the move to Saudi. I think he's playing really well. His long balls are very, very effective. We've seen them trouble Chelsea, we've seen them trouble Manchester United. His off-the-ball work rate looks fine. I was slightly concerned his legs might have gone. So the element that made him so effective at Liverpool, for free, looks like a really good acquisition. Let's talk about Fabian Hurtzler's Brighton then. I think this is, again, a really tough one to do. Standout names for me, Joel Veltman, who at 34 years old plays consistent football, never gives the ball away ever. He's played in 2 or 3 different roles in this Hurtzler system, and prior to that in the De Zerbi system. So I think Veltman is a real contender here. In forward areas, some of the names are slightly more obvious. Minter and Mitoma maybe on a European standpoint are a little bit underrated, but Minter this season has been that good. I don't think you can call him underrated. Jack Hinchelwood, again, super versatile, and I actually think he's been heavily missed at the start of this season. There's so many players in it. Ayari. But I actually want to talk about Jan-Paul van Hecke, because this player is still only 25 years old. He is the natural leader of this Brighton side alongside Lewis Dunk. He's in the top 5% of European centre-backs for his progressive pass numbers. He also carries the ball really effectively into the midfield and breaks lines. But it's his defensive ability I want to talk about, because he is a dog at the back. He wants to get involved. He wants to be brutal. He wants to hit tackles, win headers, put his body in front of it for blocks. And that is what I really like about him. At 25 years old, he's approaching, I think, next year he'll have 1 year left on his contract. I don't see loads of people linking him with moves away from the club, and I don't want to be the guy who's just linking all of these players with moves away. But, with a year left on his contract, playing at this level consistently, Dutch international, I don't know what more he can do. He is so consistent, so effective. He wins Brighton's Player of the Year, Players Player of the Year, Fans Player of the Year. I think he's a beast. For Burnley, I'm going to go for the obvious, Esteve. I think without him, they're in real trouble. Obviously, part of that unit that was so brilliant last season, record-setting clean sheets, record-setting goals conceded. So far this campaign, at least, it looks like he's taken that step up in his stride. 5th most duels of any defender won so far this season. He's going to have to do a lot of that. I know he had a bit of a whiff at the weekend against Man City. 2 own goals ended up getting credited against him. But without him, I think the Burnley backline would look massively different. I think you could have put Dubravka in here in terms of underrated signings Premier League wide, because he started the campaign brilliantly. Looks basically at Trafford's level from last season, which is insanely hard to do. But I think Esteve needs some flowers. How do you do Chelsea? Honestly, let's have a look through this squad. I mean, I'm going man for man here. Could we talk about Tosin? Potentially, I think we could. Benoit Badiashile, no. Levi Cole's out. Wesley Fana's out. I think Marc Cucurella, on a European sense, is underrated. I think he probably is one of the best left-backs in the world. Maybe even the second best left-back in the world, behind Nuno Mendes, who is in a league of his own. Obviously, he's in that contention for that 2nd or 3rd place spot, I think. In 1v1 defending, he's so hard to beat. I think Michael Olise, probably the best job of any winger I've seen against him recently, where he tried not to beat him 1v1. He left a little bit of gap and then sort of played this playmaker role. That worked really effectively against him, because if you want to beat him in those situations where you're standing him up or you're taking him down the line, it's just so hard. Joao Pedro maybe a little bit. Pedro Neto, I think Pedro Neto could be considered underrated, but his output maybe hasn't gone for him in that sense. I don't think he's ever scored more than 5 league goals in his career so far, so I want to see more in terms of goal scoring from him this campaign to really jump him into that category. Yeah, I think for Chelsea, honestly, I'm going to go for Tosin Adarabioyo. Without him so far this season, since he's picked up the injury, I think the backline has looked even shakier, and when he's not there and you're playing Fofana and Chalobah, or you're playing Acheampong, or you're playing Badiashile, I think he's quite clearly the guy that's missing. Obviously, without Levi Colwill, who is the standout centre-back, for me, Tosin is probably second best at the club. Again, I think Crystal Palace have a few names to pick from, but I'm going to go for Chris Richards. I spoke about this on Zach's show last week, but he is flying under the radar as one of the best centre-backs in the league so far this campaign. That back three unit is unbelievable that Glasner has put together. Out of possession, they're so hard to break down. I think in this 18-game unbeaten run, which is obviously the best in Europe, nobody comes close, even across 2025, it absolutely obliterates anybody else. They've only conceded 17 goals. Out of possession, the structure is perfect. And Chris Richards, when he first arrived at Palace, I don't think it was going to work. It didn't feel right playing in the back four. He was kind of playing at right back at times. This system suits him down to the ground. I remember when he was at Bayern, and he was highly rated, but it was again question marks, how does he fit into that back four? In the back three on the right-hand side, he can let his athleticism show. You look at some of these numbers off the ball, don't worry about it so much on the ball because it's not his responsibility to build up from the back. But, he's in the top 10% of European defenders for his tackles, for his blocks. He's right up there for clearances and aerial duels won. His partnership with Lacroix is excellent. Superb as well with Daniel Munoz outside him. What more can Chris Richards do? I don't think he can do too much more. I think he's operating at the absolute top of his game right now. Let's have a look at Everton's squad then. Who can we pick from Everton's squad? Well, Jordan Pickford has consistently across his career been underrated, but I don't really want to talk about him. I think it's a bit of an obvious shout. But I actually think I'm going to pick Vitaly Mykolenko. I don't think lights out left back, but for what David Moyes needs in this system, he's ideal. Again, this is a player in the top 5% of European fullbacks for his clearances, for his blocks. He's right up there in terms of his interceptions. This campaign has been a bit hit and miss because of injury, but when he's fit, he makes a big difference to the Everton side. When they don't have to play James Garner at left back and they can instead use a natural left-footed Mykolenko, I think he's absolutely fine, very consistent in there. I think Everton was one of the harder teams to pick, to be honest with you. Everton fans, please do let me know who you would have gone for. Would you have picked Mykolenko? At Fulham, a couple of names to consider so far this season. Josh King. I don't know whether he's underrated really though, King, or sort of this wonder kid that's about to explode that everybody knows is really, really good. It's a similar sort of case for Iwobi. Is Iwobi underrated? Because last season, 15 goal involvements. I think he is Fulham's best player. Carries the ball amazingly well between the lines. Huge chance creation numbers. Plays in a few different positions, but plays very, very consistently. Started 35 out of 38 games last campaign. He started every single game so far this season. I think he's their most vital player, but I don't think he's necessarily underrated. Which leads me to Sasa Lukic, who really stepped into that void left by Joao Palhinha alongside Sander Berge, and they formed a great partnership. I think a lot of teams could learn from Sasa Lukic and Sander Berge in terms of how well they gel as a two. It's all well and good having two players that are star names, but don't work and complement each other that well. I think Lukic and Berge complement each other perfectly. I could have gone for Sander Berge in here, but I think Sasa Lukic doesn't get many headlines. For a 29-year-old, he carries the ball really well. He's in the top 25% of European central midfielders for his progressive carries, but he's also in the top 10% of Premier League midfielders for his tackles. So his off-the-ball work is great. He progresses it quite nicely. He keeps it very simple, and he doesn't get any headlines. He flies right under the radar. In fact, if you thought of Fulham and you went through the 11, Sasa Lukic would probably be the 11th name you named on that team sheet. So I'm going to go for Sasa Lukic. Also at the start of this season, I think Ryan Sessegnon is having a really good campaign. He's flying under the radar, but for me, Sasa Lukic needs more plaudits. For Leeds, I think there's an obvious shout, and that is Ethan Ampadu, obviously the club captain. He is a huge character. I was at Leeds on Wednesday, and just being around Ethan Ampadu and being around the squad, you can really sense how much of an important player he is to the team and to the unit. Yes, he's come up from the Championship last season where he had a couple of injury problems, didn't he? He only started 26 of the available games, but the season before, 46. This season, he started 4 of 6. And his on-the-ball numbers continue to get better. They really do. When he first joined the Premier League, when he first came to Chelsea from Exeter City, I think there was a question mark about what's his best position. Is it going to be a centre-back? Is it going to be a defensive midfielder? Does he have the size to play as a centre-back? Didn't work at Chelsea. He had a couple of loan spells that didn't quite work. I think in this role, now slightly more central, Daniel Farke is playing him, that's where you're seeing the best of Ethan Ampadu. You look at some of his passing numbers over the last 365 days, extremely consistent on the ball. And that is something I don't think you would maybe saying about him earlier on in his career. I think he's definitely improved as a passer. He's always been really hard-working off the ball, loves a crunching tackle, and it definitely feels like he's starting to mature into the player people thought he was going to be when he was at Exeter City, which was a superstar in the making. You know, this is a player making his debut in the lower leagues at 14, 15 years old. Super hyped. Went to Chelsea, didn't quite work, and now we're seeing the fruits of those labours because his pass numbers are excellent, his off the ball work is excellent, his leadership capabilities are great. Let's go to Liverpool then. I've got the squad list up in front of me here, and I think it's really hard, especially with like the big six, the traditional big six, to pick players that are underrated because their own fan bases overrate so many of their players or speak about them so consistently. They're making headlines all the time. Like, who in this squad would you define as underrated? Is it Chiesa at this stage? I mean, he's underrated by Slot, isn't he? I know that he wasn't taken to the Champions League because he had the knock, but is he underrated by Slot? Does he get enough minutes given the form he's in, the goal-scoring form, the creative form, the effectiveness off the bench? I know that's his role, the backup, but maybe he's a bit underrated by Slot. I think, though, the player I'm going to go for is Curtis Jones. Every time he comes onto the field, I think he makes a real impact in this Liverpool side. Dominic Szoboszlai could also be a contender for here because he played in that right-back role. He's very versatile, super effective. But when Curtis Jones comes onto the pitch, there's an added element of quality from deep positions. You look at some of these numbers in terms of his progressive passes, his progressive carries, all really good, but also the way he receives passes in very smart areas. In the final third, he is a creator from deep. And I'm just not too sure what else Curtis Jones can do to get into the side. Because obviously McAllister is ahead of him, Szoboszlai is ahead of him, Gravenberch is ahead of him, Wirtz is ahead of him. So it feels like he is the backup guy. He is the backup dancer. But at some stage, I want to see him become the main guy. I think he's on his way to earning that. Now, is that going to be at Liverpool? Liverpool fans, let me know. What is Curtis Jones' role this season beyond the guy who comes on in cup games, maybe gets minutes in the Champions League, but isn't the starter in the big games, in the big moments? What is his role going forward? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. For Man City, I've gone for Kushnerov, who obviously had the disastrous debut or first 10 minutes against Chelsea, and people sort of clowned him. But why are people still talking about that? Let's get that narrative out of people's mouths. Kushnerov is sensational. Be it at centre-back, be it at right-back, his physicality, his pace are a problem for any wide player or forward. He's an aggressive tackler, wins the ball constantly, and he's nowhere near as bad as people give him credit for on the ball. Last season, across the whole campaign, he started just 6 games. He came in January, didn't he? So not loads of minutes. Bit part player, some might call him. This season, I think he is growing into that position of being a starter consistently, despite the fact he's still only 21 years old. He started 50% of the games. He's played 4 matches in total, 228 minutes, and nearly half of what he put up across the whole of 6 months last season. So Pep clearly trusts him more. Pep likes his physicality, and yet he still gets sort of clowned on by certain people in the press, certain football fans, because of that disastrous debut. Get that narrative out of your mind. This is a really good player. For United, where do you go? I kind of just went for the obvious. I went for Matthijs de Ligt. I think he probably has been Man United's best player this season, maybe. Now, he had a disaster against Brentford. Let's forget the Brentford game if we can, just for a moment, because in the other matches so far this season, he's won the most duels of any defender in the entire Premier League. If you are a striker and want to play back to goal, he's going to give you hell. That is where you are dead against de Ligt. Be it Gyökeres, be it Pedro, it's a problem. As soon as you go that way and behind him, we start to see other issues. But what I do think I like about de Ligt is his willingness to press high, to jump out the line, to get on the ball and try and make something happen. Because too many of Manchester United players are far too passive in the games. Far too passive. I think it's interesting he's not part of the Manchester United leadership group. Obviously, this new leadership group that Amorim put in place in the summer. He's not in the 5, but it feels like when he's on the field, he is a massive leader. So that is a bit bizarre to me, personally, but I think he's probably been Man United's best player and hasn't won any of the accolades. I'm going for a slightly different tact at Newcastle because on Zach's video I talked about Dan Burn. I think it's really underrated the job he's done at Newcastle, playing multiple different roles, multiple different systems under Eddie Howe, very consistently part of an amazing backline. One of the best, if not the best, alongside Arsenal in the league. I'm actually going to go for Sandro Tonali, who I think is insane. Like, I think he is almost not at Declan Rice and Caicedo and Gravenberch levels quite, but like he's knocking on that door. His off-the-ball work physically is never-ending. Like, I see him shooting. He's back in his own box tackling. He's up the other end creating. He's in the midfield scrapping. He is everywhere, Tonali. His all-round game is maybe not painted fairly enough in the numbers. Like, they're fine, and he's certainly doing well in this final third statistic game. But back here, this feels like it doesn't paint the true picture of Sandro Tonali's game. His ability to get the ball in deep areas and progress it just boggles the mind every time I watch him. I'm like, wow, you're so calm and composed on the ball. But he's such a dog out of possession. I think what it doesn't show these numbers is the pressing he does out of possession. It's scary. The fitness levels are absolutely outrageous. He must have been doing ultra marathons in his ban. Like, where on earth does this fitness level come from? I think he's one of the best midfielders in Europe. Honestly, I do. And that's the reason I'm going to have him in underrated, because I don't think people consider him at that level. They think, oh yeah, good midfield. I think maybe Bruno's better than... I actually think he's better than Bruno G. And that is saying something. For Forest, I'm going to go for Nico Williams. I think his adaptability at left back and at right back is key to any system they want to use. I think with Ola Aina out injured, he's going to have a massive role to play in any success that Forest have. Last campaign was the most minutes he's played in a single season in his professional career. So great to see him really finally having huge impacts on the side. He started 28 games last season. He started every single game so far this season. And his off-the-ball work can't be denied. He's in the top 5% of European fullbacks for his tackles. He's in the top 5% for his clearances. I think his off-the-ball reading of the game could do with a bit of work, but because he's so attacking, that is going to suffer, right? Like, he's getting a huge volume of shots off for a fullback. He gets into dangerous areas. His ball striking's great. I think in the fullback area, if you took Nico Williams out of that Forest side, they would look quite slow, quite pedestrian, especially when Zinchenko is at left back. They need his physicality. When he's playing at left back and Ola's at right back, they're a formidable duo of these fullbacks. Let's have a look at Tottenham then. We'll go through the squad here. Who's underrated here, honestly? Are the centre-backs underrated on the European stage, maybe? I actually think the answer here, and this is a bit of a rogue one, so bear with me on this, but I think it might be Pedro Porro. Let's have a look at him this season, and I saw this pop up a couple of weeks ago now, and I think it's still very, very similar in terms of the numbers, but all round, first for defensive duels against Premier League fullbacks, first for progressive actions, first for crosses, first for forward passes, first for passing to the final third, first for progressive passes. On the ball, monster. Off the ball, excellent. His crossing is so good. Look at the ball he puts in midweek in the Champions League. If he could just lock in, concentrate a little bit more, maybe remove some of these pot shots from his game, his crossing is definitely one of the best of any fullback in the Premier League. It's so whipped, it's so direct. He's a brilliant player, Pedro Porro, and it definitely flies under the radar when you have conversations about the league's best right backs. You obviously think immediately to the likes of Jurriën Timber, and he's definitely a couple of levels ahead, I think. But Pedro Porro doesn't often put many feet wrong for Spurs. For Sunderland, again, loads of options we could have picked from here. Mukiele started the season amazingly, as is Alderete, obviously Robin Ruffs. But are these underrated? We're talking about him a lot. We're talking about Xhaka a lot. Isidor's amongst the goals. We're speaking about him a lot. I'm going to go for Noah Siddiqui, who has partnered Granit Xhaka in the midfield. Hasn't got the headlines of Granit Xhaka, and that's the reason I think he's going to go into my underrated picks. Because, yes, we've got the experience, the leadership, title winner, Xhaka, but Siddiqui's physicality off the ball, it's almost Kante-like in terms of his ability to eat up ground, win tackles, win interceptions, get his team up the pitch. Yeah, I really like Noah Siddiqui. The fact that him and Xhaka combined cost like 30 million, 35 million, it's astonishing. West Ham, again, I don't really know who you pick here. I'm going to go for Malik Diouf. Is he underrated? I don't know, man. I feel like Malik Diouf isn't really underrated. This is a bit of a cop-out from me, but I kind of wanted to talk about him because this is one of the finds of the season. This is one of the signings of the summer. No doubt about it. West Ham's connections to Slavia Prague whoever's in charge of that link, whoever that scout is, pay rise, pay rise, pay rise. Because I think Foul, excellent, consistent. Souček, excellent, consistent. Now Malik Diouf. Malik Diouf's physicality on the left and ability to cross at pace is actually insane. Like, it's nuts. Midweek on Monday against Everton, the run for the Bowen goal, he's travelling at 100 miles an hour when he whips that ball in. He's up and down constantly, but he's so good at putting balls in without having to dilly-dally, take touches. He wants to get to the ball and put it across the box. Where has this been in the world of fullbacks recently? I cannot watch another fullback fake across, come back, restart to the midfield. Fake across, recycle. Stick it in the mix. That's the reason I like Diouf. For Wolves, let's keep it simple. I'm going to go for Ladislav Krejci, who started the season amazingly well. I think the fact he can play in midfield and at the back offers huge potential for Vitor Pereira, who definitely didn't quite get it right at the start of the campaign, but I think this switch to a back four looks like it could well work, and I think without Krejci, I'm not sure it's gonna. He's going to be vital to the side. Again, it's a bit of a cop-out because I think everybody knows how good he's going to be. He's probably Wolves' most important player already, which is nuts to say. But, you know, when you sell Rannick Nurin, you sell Mateus Cunha in the summer, you're always going to be in a bit of bother. I'm going to put him in there. Okay, so that was my list of each club's most underrated player. What did you think of it? Let me know who your club's most underrated player is in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you later. Bye.